Hi, welcome back to the series on parenting. I'm so glad that you've come back and we're looking now at a third lesson. And I really do believe, as I've said before, that you can do it. Yeah, you really can raise healthy kids. Not kids, kids. Not perfect children, but children that can function in the world, have a spiritual relationship to God, and just an overall general healthiness to them. So let's get started today, because today we're going to look at understanding your child's brain. I'm no neuroscientist, but I have some training in what we're learning now about this amazing organ called the brain that God has given us. And it has a lot to do with why your child does what they do. You can see in this graphic, I don't know what the dude has spilled, but it looks like chocolate and a mess. And he's standing there with it smeared all over him. And in my mind, he's saying, I didn't do it. So what can we learn about the brain today that's going to help you as you parent? By the way, just a footnote. Since the early 80s and the 90s, we have just made quantum leaps forward in our understanding, not just the brain in general, but how it works, how it fires, how it calms, how it gets activated. And that's what I want to give you today and gift you with, so that you can begin to have a general understanding about what your child's brain is doing when they are doing some of the things they do. I'm not telling you anything new with this slide. I know that. A child's brain is highly emotional. Come on, Dr. Carlisle. We already know that. Yeah, and we're going to look at why is that such a powerful emotional expression that comes out of these little ones. You've got one here that looks really, really angry. Got one that's just happy as can be. Sometimes they can be so happy that you want them to cut it off. And then there's one that has a common experience of fearful, since some of the experiences in our culture, especially with COVID, there's been a higher level of anxiety than we've ever seen before. Now, here is a simple view of a crosscut of the brain. I'm going to give you a little bit of explanation as to why they can get emotional at so high levels. I hope no one's looking at us right now, but adults can do it too. Probably didn't know that. We can have pretty intense emotions. You can see in this diagram the word amygdala. I call that part of the brain Amy for short. It's a little green almond-shaped organ in the mid-range of the brain. If we were to look at your ear, it's kind of in this section and below. Up in this area would be the cortex, across here then in this area more the limbic system, emotional brain. And that little amygdala is right in the middle of that. You actually have one on the left side of your brain. Probably looks like I'm pointing to the right. On the left side of your brain, that when a child or a person feels unsafe, they move toward others. There's one on the right side of the brain, and that one is the one that says, I'm not going to get help in this position or this place that I'm at, so I've got to do something myself. Here's an amazing thing about that little amygdala and the emotional brain. This part, the emotional brain, the amygdala, they are online and active, we believe, 3 months before the child is born. That's kind of a wow. 3 months before they're born, that the child can pick up the connection with mom in somewhat of an emotional but primitive way. And that little part of the brain has a lot to do with why emotions are expressed at intense levels for a child. Here are just some general ideas about the amygdala. First of all, that's how the child survives. That little amygdala, you know what it does? It's that thing that jumps in and takes over when a child gets afraid and has to jump out of the way or run to a parent. And it does the same thing in an adult, but in a different fashion. It literally activates the fight-flight system. That's what a child does when they can't get support from an adult or an adult's not available. They're either going to fight it, punch back, or more often than not, because they're small, they're going to run away. Those emotions are very strong, and they literally take over the majority part of the brain at that time. Now, the amygdala is biased to the negative, meaning it's a pessimist. That's what it means. My wife in our relationship is the optimist. She says I'm the pessimist. I think I'm the realist, but that's a whole different marital deal. It's biased to the negative. That's because if you look at this next bullet point, it's got this outstanding memory, and when the emotional brain gets activated and takes charge, it begins to view the future from all of the memories that have been collected. Let's say a child has been scared by a dog. Wasn't even a bad experience, but the dog walked up on the child was small and it scared them. Anything that looks, smells, acts like a dog, the amygdala will search the memory for that. And if what they're looking at now has any resemblance or sense orientation, acts like a dog in any way, to that little child's brain, that is a dog, and that dog's going to hurt me. Works the same way with adults when we've had negative experiences with others and we get reminded of them. But we're talking about children now. Not only that, they have this great memory, but the amygdala and its activation, the child has no mechanism in the brain to regulate and control those emotions. I mentioned that in one of our earlier sessions. They don't. There's nothing there that if you tell a child to stop it, it's a little bit like spitting in the wind, right? It's not helpful that the child can't stop it. Now, as they develop, they, with the parents' help, can get some of that ability, but initially, when they're small, they can't regulate. And that's why when a child can't regulate, they're going to need help. Kind of like this graphic here in the bottom right. The little girl, I can't tell, sad or fearful, but her mother is bringing her in close, tells you the importance of touch. And we'll reference this a little further in the next few slides. Now, here's that same brain. And you see the amygdala, which is online, not just at birth, but 3 months before. And then you see up in the top part of the brain, it says 18 months. This part of the brain, up in here, our thinking brain, does not even come online until the child is 18 months. That's kind of the earliest, maybe up to 24 months. So if you ask a little one, why did you do that? They really don't know. What they're going to do, if they're a little bit afraid, is they're going to make stuff up. I remember being too firm with my son Chase one time, and I thought he had lost my billfold. The truth was, I guess I just should confess that, I misplaced it. But he began to tell me, oh, Dad, I had it, and I put it here. We looked, no, I put it here, I put it here. And we went all over the house and the yard, because he was pretty activated and he couldn't think very well at all. So this thinking brain comes on then, but it's not super developed in any way. So you've got this strong emotional brain and this kind of underdeveloped, immature, cognitive problem-solving brain. Here's one way to think of it. You see this hand I'm trying to get in the camera here. I'm going to go ahead and close mine like the second figure there in the graphic. This is the eyes, the front part of the brain. Underneath here, this is the amygdala and the emotional brain, brainstem, and then spinal cord. We're designed to have our thinking brain connected richly to our emotional brainstem, and then what the senses and all we get from the body. When emotions are too much, Dan Siegel says, another author, we flip our lid. I have flipped my lid. Maybe you have too. Yeah, most of us have. Or we've seen others do that. So what we're going to learn to teach our children and to teach ourselves is how do we pull that back down so we have the problem solving and the emotions. Not just emotions and not just thinking. It's not either or. Being a thinker is not good without feeling, and being a feeler is not good without thinking. But that's a way you may be able to explain it to your child as they are trying to figure out what part of the brain they are in. Remember I said we'd come back to this, a child cannot self-regulate their own emotions. Here's a dad, and the little guy just looks pretty mad to me. Upset, kind of got the frowny brow. And Dad's arm comes around him, and in some way, his dad is helping him calm. Literally, touch, if allowed, can calm. If you don't want to force the child, but can do that. Can also do that with adults as well. Well, here's an illustration of what we have to do as parents with our children. You'll see that first statement that the parent is the container for the kid's emotions. And you'll see what I've got in the graphic here is a device, a container where a bomb can be detonated. And you can see the explosion, then you see the device that's used for detonation still intact. When we are a container, somewhat like, and let me just go back to this slide, this guy's doing. When we're a container for our child's emotions, it calms them. Strong emotions can be pretty scary when a child feels like their emotions are forcing them to be out of control. And here's what this requires. Mom and dad, or if you're a single mom or single dad, or if you're a grandparent that's parenting, I understand there are a number of parenting people out there in our families. Our emotional stability is required to be a container, like in this example of the bomb. Feelings aren't bombs, they're just intense and they can be explosive. So as a parent, I've had to do a lot of work, and I'm assuming if you haven't, you will, to become a container that can safely allow the child to have those emotions, not encourage them, but help the child regulate them. It's going to be so important to them in their future, and especially in their teens and adult life. Just a moment for you to pause the training and reflect. What are some of the most common feelings your child experiences? I mean, more intense ones. And when they're pretty much out of control, what was that like for you? How did you react to your child? And are you needing to make some adjustments to the way that you reacted? Take as long as you need, and then come back and we'll continue. Strong, intense emotions are, I hate to say this, but they're normal for a child. That brain has no way of holding like that bomb holding device. They don't have that where those emotions can be contained. The parent is going to have to do that. But understand this, the child is going to have intense emotions. And here's the challenge. Maybe some of you are like me. I grew up where intense emotions were not healthy or good. And so when my child did it, guess what I did? Boy, I corrected way too fast. I had to learn that I was the container. and that they had to practice a lot. Wouldn't it be great if they got it the first time? Of course, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be great if I got it the first time, which we don't. We're learning. So this person who's having these intense emotions, like these graphics, they're going to have to be taught. They're going to have to experience the parent's stability, and amidst our imperfection, I just think we ought to get it right about 75% of the time. That's just my own thought. We're not going to be 100% correct on our parenting. Get you off the hook. That's a shame thing, but not for this particular study. So, how do we help calm the amygdala? Well, first of all, we want you as a parent, when we're trying to calm the child's amygdala, for you to have a calm amygdala. I love kind of this serene graphic of just calming it down, taking a big breath. And I'm going to give you a technique that I have been certified in and that I've learned that is an astounding tool to calm your emotions. And I'm going to teach you how to calm yours with this technique called Havening Touch. It'll be HT throughout the slides. But you can also teach your child. So if you follow the sentences on this slide, you'll see that there's a mechanism of action with havening that we've never seen in the counseling psychology arena. We've never seen the type of application that havening has. So it really does require us to have a little bit of an open mind, like to hold it loosely and go, wow, just because it's different doesn't mean it's negative. And you'll see here that the havening uses human touch to facilitate change, to lead to change, to help us change. Now, we're talking about appropriate and healthy touch with all the concerns out there for abuse. And remember, we are touch-based beings. We literally are wired for touch. How do you soothe a little kid? Well, you'll pick them up. If they're really upset or scared, especially when they're small, you can pat on them. You can talk to them with a soothing voice. You can put them over here and hold them real tight. And what they'll eventually do is your emotional stability will begin to calm them. Their heart will slow down. Their breathing will slow down. The founders of Havening Touch found out, and they did this through a lot of scientific investigation, that human touch can be used in a therapeutic way to create change. Like, see this little baby? I mean, this is a happy little baby. Let's assume the baby was upset. Mom's holding the baby's head, talking with the baby, and then there is this calming reaction that surely we've all seen out there along the way. So Havening Touch helps you regulate your mind, your emotions, and your body, like your whole person. Wouldn't that be a great thing? If you were pretty upset and there was a way, a technique you had to calm yourself before you engaged your children, Havening Touch actually, through this electrochemical process, creates a safe space for you, a calm space for you. And here's the application. Above the forehead, under the eyes, top of the shoulder down to the elbow, and then the hands. These are the three movements because these particular areas of application create a stronger electrochemical experience than other areas of touch. They actually, and you'll see this in a minute, they create a delta wave that calms and creates safety inside. Don't get overwhelmed by all this. It's just follow the colors with me. You've got Amy, that's the amygdala, remember? If we get her too upset or too activated, she pulls away from the thinking brain. Up here in blue, Amy's in red. Then Amy here in red will go into fight, flight. And at times, if fight, flight doesn't work, we can freeze or get paralysis. Or sometimes people can even sort of faint, collapse. So when there's a threat experience, you see this at the bottom right corner, it comes in through the senses, from the body into where it says threat here, that's the brainstem. It comes in at 75 milliseconds speed. It's a gamma wave. 75 milliseconds. I hope you're thinking, how fast is that, Paul? Well, I'm going to tell you how fast that is. If you were to blink, do this with me one time, just fast as you can. 75 milliseconds is 4 times faster than blink. 4 times. So this information of threat is flying fast, fast, fast to Amy. Quick reaction, back down to the body, and we jump, run, fight, whatever we do. So in havening, there's a little bit of working memory right up above Amy. It looks like a flash drive. It's in the thinking brain. Holds about 7 pieces of data. And when Amy gets activated, there's this memory system of where have I seen this, felt this, experienced this. And this part of the brain, the working memory that holds just a little bit of data, begins to have a relationship with Amy that's reciprocal, and it becomes a loop of more and more and more and more and more and more data. Everything that can be remembered about what's fearful or frustrating or angry can be dumped on Amy. So we have a way, you'll see this black line, we've got to block that working memory from getting involved. So the way we do that is with distractions. That's going to be on our next slide. You can see there are 4 groups: movement, swimming, a whole list of things there, all types of exercise, walking. Categories, you can list A to Z, girls, where you eat, tons of things. Numbers, especially if you're good at numbers, counting backwards, or humming songs. So this is what we're going to do with the havening distraction list. If you could create 3 for each group, and it may take you a few minutes to do that, then what we're going to do is when a person is activated, let's say on a 0 to 10 scale, they are frustrated at, let's say, a 5. You will begin to apply the havening touch, I'd say twice in each area, twice here, and twice here. And while you are applying the touch that's going to create this electrochemical impact on the brain, you are to begin to go through the distraction list. For instance, I might say I'm going to do 10 jumping jacks. And I will imagine myself doing 10 jumping jacks. And I'll count them as I go. 1, 2, 3, etc. And I will do that out loud with each of the groups while I'm applying the havening touch. The categories. I can do A to Z while I'm doing the touch. A to Z boys' names. I can do Abe, Brian, Carlos, Danny. Go as far as I could go, because what we're doing, this distraction, is we're giving a job to that working memory. And that working memory then will not flood us with more information than what we already have. The same way with numbers, same way with humming Mary Had a Little Lamb, or any other song. I mean, you can add to this, but you'll need the distraction list, because if you just do the havening and you're pretty activated, you can get more emotion than you need. So here's what's happening. When we are got the distraction going on, the havening is creating these delta waves, about 3 to 5 megahertz, where a gamma wave is like 120. And when that hits Amy, It chills her out. Be sure you always do the distraction. The application with the distraction spoken out loud as you're imaging yourself doing jumping jacks or squats or bouncing a ball. And here are some general guidelines for you. Complete your distraction list with at least 3 items in each group. And you can look at this as long as you need. Practice the havening touch. Remember 2 applications in each area. And do it enough that you're not having to think about it. Then check in with your emotional state. And use a scale of, say, 1 to 10. 1 being, I'm looking at a mirrored view of me, sorry about that. 1 being like, commas can be 10, anxious, mad, whatever. Then, once you've got that number, begin applying the havening touch. If you're 5 or under, use 3 different distractions, 3 rounds. If you're 5, say 6 or above, use 6 rounds. You just need more if you're more activated. And after you've finished the rounds, give yourself that 1 to 10 again. Say you start out at 5 and then say you're at a 4 or 3 or 2. You can keep going, do another round, and you can bring it on down more. And you can use it as needed. And here's the cool thing. Children can learn to do this. They can learn for you to be their container, but they can also begin to do the application. They may not like touching their forehead, but they will do this maybe, or maybe they'll do this, especially as they find that it's helpful. So we're going to help calm the amygdala. Just some basic ideas. Be sure you're calm, using havening touch at your own time out, counting as you're breathing, count to 100. See this as an opportunity for connection and teaching with your child. Now, I know your brain's going to need to retrain itself. When a child is mad or upset or crying or whining, we don't usually think, whoa, what an opportunity for connection and teaching. But it is. That's how the brain works. The brain's needing help. Think of this as your child's emotions crying out for help. That's what's happening. Remember, you are helping your child calm their brain. Calming that brain is going to take them from this lid flipped back down to this. Listen with empathy and validate the kid's feelings. You can kind of step over into their world. You can say something like, you really feel sad. And you can validate that sad is okay. It's not the sad, mad, or whatever, or too much glad. It's the behavior that can go along with that that becomes destructive. Everyone can feel sad, you may tell this child sometimes. You might even say, I do too. That way the child knows that they're not alone. Help your child label their emotions, hers or his. Ask, what are you feeling? And here's a helpful thing, a feeling face chart. And I will include this so you'll have it as a PDF. If they're not sure of the words for feelings, they may point to the face. Angry, scared, sad, happy, calm, disappointed, anxious, frustrated. They can go, I'm that one. And then you may say to them, you're really frustrated because your brother, da 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 da. Now, as y'all are talking, y'all would be the southern derivative of you all. Y'all are talking. My wife tells me not to make the corny jokes, so sorry about that. While you're talking with your child and you're asking them about their feelings, you are helping them bring their thinking, problem-solving brain back down. It's helpful when you do that with them. Help them label their emotions. We've talked a little about that. You can use the chart. You can have them point it out. Then you may ask them, what feeling would you like to have? Now that's a nice shift to help the child. Then you're going to have to set limits, and you're going to help the child problem solve. They need to know that certain behaviors are not acceptable or tolerated. That's not your family values. You could ask the child, once they've kind of come down a little bit, what can you do instead next time? Feelings are not the problem, it's the behavior. We've already said that, or the misbehavior. Brainstorm some solutions and ask the child to put the solution or solutions into practice. Now, can you see that this type of interchange takes time? It does. Children don't accidentally develop emotional control. And for me, I had to learn that I had to allow more time for parenting. And when I'm rushed, I just wasn't very effective as a parent. And here's the last thing as we close out our time today, some continued practices. Notice and identify your child's emotions. We mentioned that. And while you're doing that, help her or him label that, give a word to it, really sad, really mad. Remember, stay in a calm place so that y'all both aren't escalating. I've had that happen where I escalate, they escalate, I escalate, they escalate. When your child's emotions are intense, calm yourself. Remember, we mentioned havening touch. Review the steps that I provided to help address your child's brain-based strong emotions, including boundary setting as needed. And once again, I believe you can do it. I really do. You can make progress, not perfection. On our next session, which will be our last one, we're going to look at some fresh ideas about discipline. So be thinking about that, like what is discipline? What's the purpose of it? Then what methods can we use? Thank you again for tuning in.